What's going on? I appreciate y'all tapping in with me. It's Zak North again. And today we're going to be having a very important conversation around mental health awareness, specifically in black men, and how black women handle mental health issues with black men. And today we got a special guest from the Haus of Dreamz, the one and only V. She is an R&B artist, up and coming superstar out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So we appreciate you coming on set with us today to have a conversation. Yeah.
I'm excited.
So, one of the first questions that I wanted to ask you was, as a woman, and specifically a black woman, can you speak to your experience of receiving vulnerability and mental health conversations from men romantically?
Romantically, I can. I feel like I've had good experiences and bad experiences, so it's a heavy question, just to be quite honest. But I guess surrounding vulnerability in relationships. So I have, of course, I'm on the dating scene. I've had vulnerable conversations where it's went left and I meant for it to go right, and just all of these things. And I think that it's been a journey for me. I had a child a while back, and I literally had to grow with him, and I had to learn how to speak to my partner or my boyfriend at the time or whoever I was dating, and that requires a certain level of vulnerability. And so I've had to grow and learn how to become vulnerable, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what's it like encouraging your son as an up and coming black man to live in a space of vulnerability, and how do you encourage that? What's that conversation look like?
The type of parent that I strive to be requires a huge amount of vulnerability. I try my best to show him the way.
Yeah.
If I can, coming from a woman, especially a black woman, but I know that I cannot teach him all the things that he needs to know as a man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I rely heavily on my village, and that conversation is hard. It brings me back to my femininity every single time that, I have the conversation with him, and just being real with them and about what I expect and how I want to see him grow in his life, and, just all of these things. But it definitely takes a certain level of trust, a certain level of communication. I would say it's huge. It's
yeah,
huge with him.
I agree with that. I would tell you from my standpoint, I wasn't big on mental health years ago, and you've been knowing me for some time, so I was very dismissive to the conversation. I felt like it was a conversation that was not normal, and that people need to get over it and go on with life. Right. Because in the traumatic upbringing, in the areas of our upbringing, we had some traumatic experience. Mm-hmm. We had some great experiences, but I also think that we came up in a time where it wasn't safe to talk about emotions. It wasn't safe to talk about feelings, especially not as a son. So then I feel like I carried that over into manhood, adulthood, and fatherhood. So for me specifically, my son had a life-threatening heart condition. Look, it almost made me get choked up on camera here.
Okay.
He had a life-threatening heart condition, and it wasn't until after that I sit back. I even took like a 6-month break from music. Like I didn't know what I was feeling. I was so low, so down, so just hurt. And my hurt was stemming from him because there was a change in him. And I didn't know what to do. He had a bad attitude. He was feeling what they ended up calling adjustment disorder. Yeah. That was creating temporary anxiety and temporary depression. And it was causing him to be mean to the people he loved and to his best friend, and go within inside himself. But his life had just changed. He had open heart surgery, and he could no longer play sports again, and he has to take a medication every day for the rest of his life, or he's gonna die. The only thing that I knew how to do was recall back what I've been told from the women in my family. You hear therapy, 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 therapy,
Right.
therapy. And I've tried it before, but I was just kind of like, oh my God, I'm gonna pay somebody to tell my problems to, and they just gonna
Right.
listen and say, tell me about that. Tell me about
That part.
Tell me about this. You know, I never stuck with it long enough to actually get to the point where they start diagnosing my life and what's going on and suggesting different functionalities. So I put him through it, and the biggest change that I seen in him was him revert back to himself, to have somebody to offload all of the thoughts and all of the feelings, because I admit I was not equipped to handle that at all. Do you think as a mother of a black son that we do a good enough job with introducing therapy into our homes, into our sons and emotion? And what does that look like for you?
I think that's a great question, and I also commend you for taking those steps to put your son in therapy, and just being aware, having that awareness as a parent, like that is huge to me. And then as far as do I think that we do a great job, I think that it is a growth point for our community.
Yeah.
I feel like the conversation is more prevalent today, like in today's time, you know what I'm saying? But back when we were younger, no, not at all. Like I went through in a insurmountable of things that I went to my parents about, and they just didn't know. You know what I'm saying? Like they just simply didn't. They're like, you'll grow out of it, or I'm gonna pray over you and you'll be fine. And that's just how we grew up, and that's okay. I've learned to look at my parents as people versus just parents. And once you're able to separate that, then you're able to forgive more. But nonetheless, having my son, I honestly, just a vulnerable moment for me, I just began therapy last year for the first time ever. And now I look at, I'm asking these questions like, hey, son, are you okay? Or what more can I do as a parent? Or what do you need from me? And I have to have a certain level of awareness, because even though I'm asking, he's 14, even though I'm asking him these things, he's still just a child. So he doesn't even know what he needs at the moment. So it's very important for me to have that open door policy so that he can feel comfortable enough to come to me. And if he needs to talk about these things, if I don't have the answer, bro, we're going to get you the answer. I've never claimed to be perfect. That's really huge for me in my household. I've never claimed to know it all. Like I've been upfront about my issues, the things that I've went through, especially as a young parent. And so I think that our community it's becoming more hip to our community, but there is still so much growth, that we have to do. Growth that we have to do, and I feel like we're getting there. The conversation's here, so
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's coming.
Absolutely. I agree. I remember myself as a child, and I look at my youngest son, and he cries, as you know, over everything. He's super emotional. And sometimes I'm guilty of saying, man, toughen up, man, stop crying about you. Everything's not worth your tears, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I echo these messages that I was told as a kid, but when I look back, I was him. I was just like him. I was super emotional, and the slightest thing, I would cry. I wouldn't, what I'm saying? Now, I would fight behind them tears,
Right.
but I would be crying while I'm fighting. You know what I'm saying? And I think that going back to what we talked about at the beginning, in relationships, we carry that into our adulthood. So for me, I created this ego, or this shell of a person, and I had no idea about vulnerability. And once I started learning about vulnerability, right, and I expressed it in a relationship and actually talked about my feelings, it felt like a mother setup.
Right.
It felt like a setup. Like the conversations from my end would shift from me to her, instead of acknowledging how I feel.
Talk about it.
And seeing the strength behind me saying, hey, I feel alone. Hey, I feel hurt. Hey, I feel frustrated, when you learn these I statements when you do therapy. But when you actually apply it in your relationship, especially when you're applying it to the same intracultural relationship, like black man, black woman, where we both come from this environment of no emotional safety.
Right.
You know, what I've experienced is that women on the other side of that don't, and not just in our culture, but most women that I've come into contact with don't know how to handle male vulnerability, or when we're telling our side of it. And I think that's a reaction that some women give when they don't know what to do with that vulnerability.
Right.
So the natural reaction, I think, is fight or flight, right? And you get in survival mode. And culturally, most of us stand and fight. We didn't get the run. You know what I'm saying? So it's me. Oh, you taking a shot at me? Oh, let me defend me. I'm gonna shoot my missiles back at you.
Right.
So what can you speak to, like, any times like a man has unloaded on you or talked about those feelings and you just kind of been like, oh shit, bro, this is too much?
Oh my gosh, like I have like so many stories.
Yeah.
I literally, what's funny about what you said is I was on the way back from Atlanta this weekend with my mom in the car, and we were talking about marriage and this and that, and she literally was like, V, you gonna have to have somebody strong. Like you just need like the most alpha type of male there is. And I'm like, Mom, no, I don't. But what that stems from, it's like, I would say, I'll just use my story. That's all I can really use, is having a son so young. I wasn't allowed to be soft because I was left with raising him. So my masculine energy ruled like completely. So anytime I was in a relationship, it was like two dudes basically. You know, every human being has your masculine, your feminine energy, but my masculine ruled everything. Like there was no leading, no protecting, no nothing. What I said, you know, I was the one who led everything. And it's because I did not even know how to tap into that vulnerable side. I did not know how to tap into my soft side. I felt like I was in victim mode and I wasn't given the opportunity to just be soft, you know, just for a minute. And so there has been multiple times, I can use one of a past relationship, and amazing guy, but I remember calling him sensitive, and I feel so bad now that I know it was me. It was me who didn't know how to be vulnerable and to know how to be receptive to what he was saying. Yeah. He was trying his best to be vulnerable, but I was like, look, I got to do this. I'm coming home, making sure you good, making sure the kid good. Like, I'm working out, blah, blah, blah. Well, what are you crying for? What are you coming to me and unloading for? Like, be a man, protect, lead, provide, period. That was my attitude. And so now I am working through that because I still look at men as the provider, the leader, the head of the household, if you're able to do so. But it's taking some time. Your girl's a little rough.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I'm getting there. Yeah. You know, it's life.
Man, you know I agree. I would come on the back of what you're saying and say that one of my philosophies, and for those of y'all just tapping in right now, I will tell y'all, I'm not always right. Matter of fact, you might not think I'm ever right, and that's fine. These are just my opinions. This is my viewpoint, my findings. So you can adopt them or you don't have to. With that being said, one of the things that I realize about our culture is that men, we are raised to not aspire to marriage, but we are also raised how to treat a woman and how to provide safety for a woman, and even emotional safety for a woman. When we get older, we choose not to provide emotional safety, but we know how to, and we know how to treat a woman. Women are taught to aspire to marriage, and not even the institution of marriage, just the security of marriage. Women are taught to aspire to marriage, but never taught on the way up how to treat a man and how to emotionally create safety and cultivate an environment. And so then you have this push environment where we're both pushing at each other, and it's not push-pull. And we don't know how to work together to put our emotions in the middle, sort through those, create safety for one another, and create that true that true intimacy. So I think that as we go through our teens and go through our 20 somethings and 30 somethings and 40 somethings, we're starting to figure that out.
Right.
My heart goes out to like the uncles and the aunts and everybody before us that just live this bitter cold life, and you get to 45, 50 and you move out of bedrooms, but you're still doing it for the kids. And what do you think is the floor for us as men to cultivate that back, and and even black women and women in general to cultivate that back to where there is safety for a man to say, I'm hurting. Hey, I miss you. And before I go, I was talking to my older sister earlier, and she had a situation with a guy before where she was kicking it at my crib, and she was there all weekend and for a long time, and he just had an attitude on the other end of the phone. And she was just like, okay, how are you? Good. Okay, what you got going on today? He was like, not much. Okay, what's your plans later? I gotta work in the morning. She was like, okay, what's your plans later? Well, I gotta work in the morning, but nothing. And what it was what it was given was an attitude.
Right.
And he didn't even know how to say, I miss you.
Yeah.
That simple.
That's it.
So where do you think the floor is for us to come out of this floating abyss that we in and just get grounded as men and women and work together to create intimacy, whether that's romantic or platonic?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, what this conversation is about, vulnerability.
Yeah.
It takes a huge amount, not a little bit, it takes a huge amount of vulnerability to get there. It takes communication and courage, because it takes a lot to come out and say these I feel statements. And
I feel
like, imagine when you just angry. Like, you imagine you really do miss, like, I really do miss my man, but he's busy. And I'm like, you didn't make time for me. Like, all of these things. And I feel this when you're working. It's like, nobody want to do that. But at the same time, it's so necessary.
Yeah,
It's so needed.
I agree.
So I feel like literally these conversations, just vulnerable ass conversations that we're having with one another about how we feel, and, you know what I'm saying, just different experiences. Like,
yeah.
I feel like if we continue to do these things, more people will see, more people will engage, and lives will be changed. Like, even this little conversation right here, you don't know how it will affect someone else, you know, how it will penetrate someone else's life, and they're like, oh, it may make them realize, like, I can do better, or, oh, that's right, I just miss her. Say it. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I feel like it starts with these conversations, starts with vulnerability and being honest with yourself.
Absolutely. So last question, and then we'll get out of here. For those who don't know how to be vulnerable, or what vulnerability is, or where to start with vulnerability, what advice would you give to us men? And I'm asking from the standpoint of, we want to connect with y'all. Mm-hmm. We do like intimacy. Sometimes we just don't feel like we worthy enough, or we don't feel like the argument is worth the try, the effort. So we allow fear to drive us on both sides. So what kind of advice would you give to us in terms of vulnerability?
I feel like that's a dope ass question. That's like really nice. I feel like, look, I feel, no, I feel like, how do I feel? The advice that I would give would be to first start off by being truthful, by asking those open questions, just with yourself, literally looking in the mirror, if you got a mirror, whatever you need to do, looking within and just asking yourself, just being real with yourself. Like, if you take away your friends, if you take away your circle, your family, your career, all of these outside voices, what do you want? Period. I feel like once you answer that question, then that's going to lead you to your next step. Okay, I do want to talk to her. I do want to talk to him. I do want to get married to him. Okay, what does that look like? It's just asking questions and just being honest with yourself. You said made a key point when you referred to fear, and you said you were referring to you, as a man, but we as women feel the same way. Rejection is very difficult on both ends, and I do feel like it's difficult for the man and the woman right now. The black man and the woman, it's kind of like we're bumping heads right now within society, that I've noticed. And I'm like, if we just stop for a second and just look at the big picture, we can start over. We can start fresh. And that's where I'm at. It goes back down to being honest with yourself. If you take away all these outside voices, like, what do you really want? That's it.
Absolutely. Well, V, I appreciate you coming on set with your boy, having the conversation.
Yeah.
Y'all, thank y'all for tapping in. You are now watching Where's the Floor for Us. This is an in-house conversation between the House of Dreamz team members and the House of Dreamz artists. Shout out V again for coming on set.
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much for tapping in. Go watch my other videos.